morning. It's Friday. I'm back at the cottage now, which is really great. I was in the city for a few days just to, originally to drop off some work, which of course then with the lockdown it became sort of irrelevant. So I'm back at the Cottage Studio now and very excited to be here. And I don't know, I just thought I would let you into my studio. So I was just about to start working on one of the first pieces for the show that I'm doing with my sister called A Family Garden. And all of the pieces are going to be 60 inches long. They're going to cover the wall of the gallery as if they're windows looking out into nature and out into the garden. So the garden concept has a couple of different meanings for us. One is that both Helen and I are very inspired by nature, as I'm sure you kind of know. And part of that is actually from both of us having spent so much time at the cottage where I am now. The other part is about growth and growth through generations. And our grandmother was a professional artist as well. And it helped to, I think, open the path for us to become artists, which has been really great. And it's also just kind of been a nice, I guess, continuity of original art in the house. So that's kind of what we're doing. So what I'm working on today is I'm going to do the background of this 30 by 60 panel. And this could be boring because there's no real lesson. I just thought that I may as well work. I have a lot of people ask me about my process, so I thought this way you can kind of see it in real life. So first thing I do is, even though the panels are really smooth already, I like to actually give them a sand with these sanding sponges. So part of that, it allows it to be super smooth, from smooth to super smooth. It also kind of lets me acquaint myself with the wood. As you guys know, the wood panel and the wood grain is really important. And this way I'm kind of forced to really look at the wood grain and try and figure out already how am I going to stain it and how am I going to make sure that I get the colors that I want. So this is the loud boring. So this panel is Baltic Birch, and it's actually from a company called Support Service, which I think is out of Quebec, which I haven't used before. But with COVID, some of my usual kind of suppliers are having to change. So I got this at Art Noise in Kingston. So I kind of have a real affinity for birch. One of the reasons is because it's got a beautiful wood grain. It absorbs the stain really well, but the wood grain actually to me always looks like ripples of water. And so it's kind of cool to be able to kind of use the natural organic components of the wood to create something that's inspired by nature and kind of has that representation of nature as well. We used to have a lot of birch at the cottage, a lot more than now, and it's really interesting being so intimately acquainted with a piece of land for over 40 years, where you can really see the flow of where, when I was a kid, you know, my brother and sister and I used to play up here, of course, every summer, and there was a lot more open spaces, a lot more light, which meant a lot more birch, because birch need more light. And it's now moving more into like hemlocks and pines and things like that. So one of the things I would kind of like to do is actually try and create an environment through woodlot management to kind of retain some of the birch and obviously not destroy too much of the natural habitat that's taking its own nature course. So what I do now is I'm actually just putting a thin coating of this golden airbrush medium. Airbrush medium is super thin, so it kind of behaves like water to sort of liquid, to sort of dilute down the colors. But because it's made of the same basic polymer as the liquid acrylics, it doesn't actually break down the color. So that's really important. I want that intensity of color, but I also want it to be stable. So, let's see if there's questions. Hang on, with my glasses. Sorry, I'm not very good at this part. kind of go into my own little zone. I have a question for you. Do you put something on to add UV protection? I do sometimes put a varnish on top after I do the stained wood grain. It's something I've just started to do, and I don't find that there has been an issue with the sun fading the color because it's all fundamentally still acrylics. But what it does do is it actually saturates the color so that if I choose not to resin it, I still get that really great look. Any more questions? No. If you have any questions, let me know. I just thought I'd do this. You know, I do the Talking to Artists every Thursday, which I really love, and did 2 yesterday because my 11 o'clock guest was not able to make it until a bit later, which is kind of fun. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting just to share a little bit about my process. So I work primarily with these golden fluid acrylics. They're super liquidy, and I actually water them down even more so that I can really manipulate it really carefully. I save all of my meat trays. I tend to be a little bit anal, so I have my color. Each color has its own meat tray, and that's partially so I can remember if I'm in the middle of something, which color goes into which tray, and stuff like that. So for this one, I'm going to do kind of a blues turquoises, which is kind of probably the color combination I am best known for. It's also something that, I don't know, for me, it's calming and tranquil to work through because of that whole connection to the lake and to water and stuff, which I just love. And I think other people are finding that too, especially during COVID. I'm selling a lot more of the kind of tranquil, soothing color palettes versus the vibrant oranges or the blacks or things like that. So, I'm hoping that this will end up being a key piece that I can use for the family garden postcard, so we can start to do some promotion, stuff like that. So basically I'm going to use primary cyan, and I tend to kind of put the color in front of the styrofoam tray so I can remember what I'm doing. I like teal. And I usually work with a couple of different colors. I also like this anthracene blue. It's quite dark, so I have to be a little bit careful about how I use it. And then I usually water those down. You can see kind of I water them down. So I think my primary one I'm going to use is the cyan. So I have a different cloth for each color so that I can kind of at the beginning, so I can kind of separate the colors when I'm putting them on, and then as I get closer to the end, I actually use the same cloth so it starts to blend the colors from one area to the other. So these cloths I find are the best thing to use is 100% cotton. So I was using my husband's cotton shirts that got old and worn out, and but of course he's not really wearing them anymore, and so I was finding that I now go to usually Goodwill or Salvation Army and I buy 100% cotton sheets because they've been washed a number of times, so all the starch and everything is out of them. So I find that works really well. Just gonna see if there's any other questions as I'm going through. Nope. Okay, so the goal here is to do a really thin layer. So this painting is going to be vertical like this, and so I want to make sure that the water kind of pattern feels natural this way. Now sometimes what I'll do is, as people know, it can be hung in any orientation. So a lot of times the look will be almost like light coming through the water, especially for underwater pieces. So in that case, that's kind of a different look, and that's sort of how I would approach it a little bit differently. So anyway, I'm going to just start putting. So at the beginning, I like to keep it pretty light. And I can see some of the wood grain, it's kind of going down. You can kind of see sort of like that. So I'm trying to follow a bit of the natural wood grain. I'm going to add a little bit of the blue. Oh. A little bit more than that. Wow, it's really not very saturated. So this does a couple things. one of the things it does is it allows me to get a light grain on here so I can really see where the wood grain is. So one of the things about doing this the way that I do it is that the wood grain is unpredictable. So even though I get the panels made so they have really interesting wood grain, and even though I try and really move up to it slowly, some of the wood grain ends up, the stain is absorbed more evenly between the hardwood and the softwood of the wood grain, versus in other cases it's really dramatic. And it's really unpredictable. I have not been able to figure out why that is or why that happens. So anyway, so I kind of just try to work on it slowly, and when I'm doing this first coat, I can start to see how the wood is going to react. And I try and really push it into the cracks. What I don't want is I don't want these kind of areas that are not going to be stained. So this is one of the challenges. You know, I do a lot of commissions, and I really love commissions. But one of the challenges are people kind of say, I really love the wood grain in this one. And I'm like, yeah, so do I. But there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to produce that same wood grain exactly, because it's an organic product, and that's part of the thing I like about it, is that it's natural, but it's also kind of unpredictable. So you can see I'm really pushing it hard into the cracks. And working with, get some teal in here. Working with some of the colors to sort of blend them. Now at this point, you know, I might have put all this work into creating this super cool, interesting wood grain down here, and then at the end of the day, the composition is such that I end up covering it all up, and that often happens. But that said, I do tend to take a look at the wood after I finish staining it, and that kind of makes for me is a determination of what I'm going to cover and what I'm going to leave, and what basically my composition of the piece is going to be. So, just do a little bit more here, and then I'll hold it up so you can kind of see what the intent is here. That's really dark, but the wood grain kind of goes up like this. So I'm going to try and follow the grain of the wood. Until I can kind of get something that's really interesting. This is particularly challenging when I'm doing a triptych. So when I'm doing a triptych, like I just finished a couple of them, a couple of 30 by 90s. And so of course the wood grain is going to absorb the color differently on all three panels. And what I like to do is I like to be able to stain it so you have continuity, so your eye is drawing across all three panels. So that means that I want to use kind of colors and stuff that are going to flow through everything, but at the same time, it's kind of unpredictable, so you don't really know exactly what you're going to get or how it's going to manifest itself. So, the other thing I found is you have to work relatively quickly. If this dries before you're kind of ready, that what ends up happening is you get a kind of a hard edge. And my goal really is to keep it pretty smooth. So anyway, that's kind of, you can hopefully see a bit. That's kind of going to be my first layer of it. I'm then going to go back. Obviously, I'm going to do the whole thing. And then what I'm going to do is kind of go in and figure out where the really interesting grain is and try and really accentuate it and darken that up. But anyway, hope you found that remotely interesting. I just thought I would share kind of what I'm doing, and hope to talk to you. I'll see you next week on Thursday Talking to Artists. We've got Karen Taylor on, so she'll be really exciting to talk about her new font-based series, which will be really fun. And after that, we've got Olga from the UK, who does great line drawing stuff as well as a lot of other things, but I love her line drawings. So have a wonderful day, enjoy, and be safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye.